What if the reason you still don't feel ahead has almost nothing to do with discipline, coffee habits, or whether you skipped takeout this week? What if the thing you've been calling being financially responsible is, in reality, just a more organized way of staying trapped? If that sounds uncomfortable, stay with me, and subscribe if you want the version of money talk that stops flattering you and starts telling you what the numbers are actually doing. Because this is the lie a lot of smart, hardworking people build their lives on. I'm doing okay because I'm keeping up. No, you're not doing okay just because the bill's clear. You can be employed, budgeting, contributing a little to a 401k, cooking at home on Sundays, buying almost nothing reckless, and still be bleeding out financially in a way that never shows up on your banking app as an emergency. That is exactly why debt is so dangerous. Take Anna. She's 34, works in HR, makes $67,000 a year, has a decent apartment, and from the outside, nothing looks broken. She is not the stereotype people use to explain debt away. She's not wildly irresponsible. She's not torching money on luxury bags. She plans, she tracks, she tries. She's carrying $23,400 in credit card debt across 3 cards, $28,000 left on student loans she's been paying since 2015, plus a car payment. Read that again in real life, not in spreadsheet language. It means part of every paycheck arrives already spoken for. It means she can open her salary notification, stand in her kitchen, maybe with meal prep containers stacked in the fridge and rent due next week, and still not be able to answer one clean question. What would my money do if none of these accounts existed? And that distinction changes everything. A lot of people think wealth starts when income rises. It often doesn't. Sometimes income rises and nothing structurally changes, because the extra money gets swallowed before it can become ownership, investing, options, or peace. You think you need a bigger paycheck. Sometimes what you really need is for your current paycheck to stop being harvested on the way in. So when someone says, "At least I'm making my payments," that sounds mature, but it hides the real damage. Making the payment is not the same as moving forward. In many cases, it's just paying the price of standing still. It's treading water while calling it progress, because your head is still above the surface. The monthly withdrawal leaves your account, you feel responsible for not missing it, and the system rewards you with the illusion that you are stable. That is why this conversation has to start by wrecking a piece of conventional wisdom people are weirdly proud of. Minimum competence with debt is not a wealth strategy. Being able to carry balances neatly on schedule without visible panic is not a sign that the system is working for you. Because the visible number is almost never the full number. The visible number is the account total. The monthly due, the APR sitting quietly on a screen. The invisible number is what your money never gets to become. The trip you don't take isn't the tragedy, it isn't. It's a drain with good branding. And once you see that, you stop admiring endurance for its own sake. You stop congratulating yourself just for surviving a setup that keeps converting your effort into someone else's return. You stop confusing organized strain with progress. What most people call interest is too small a word for what is happening. Interest is the number your lender prints. The real charge is bigger and meaner. It's the future value of the money that never got a chance to become yours. Every dollar sent out in interest is not just gone once. It is removed from every year after that. Take Jake. At his peak, he was carrying $41,000 in consumer debt, credit cards, student loans, and a car note. Nothing exotic, just the same stack that traps ordinary people for years. He spent the final 18 months before his last payment using the debt avalanche method, meaning he ranked every balance from highest interest rate to lowest and went after them in that order while paying minimums on the rest. Credit cards first because 24% APR was shredding him. Student loans next on Jake's balances. That choice saved about $4,300 in interest, compared with attacking the smallest balance first. That's the first proof. Same income, same debt pile, same person. That is why people underestimate the moment an account closes. They think the win is emotional. It isn't only emotional, it is mechanical. The machine literally changes shape. By the time Jake cleared the last payment, the total monthly cash flow that had been locked inside debt was $1,340. Now do the annual math. $1,340 a month is $16,080 a year. On a $71,000 salary, that is not a rounding error. That is a serious chunk of his economic life. And if that $16,080 had room to be invested instead of consumed by balances, the cost is not just this year's lost cash. It is what that money could have become over 10, 15, 20 years. And this is exactly where the story becomes hard to argue with. Before the debt was gone, Jake had tried 3 separate times to start investing. Each time the habit collapsed. Not because investing was complicated, because the cash flow was fictional. Debt kept reaching back into the month and absorbing everything. Once the last account closed, the same behavior that felt impossible started looking almost automatic. Because for the first time, the money wasn't already spoken for. Everything changes when the leak stops. That is the layer almost nobody names. 2 people can both be disciplined, both be employed, both be good with money in the social sense, and still live inside completely different financial realities. One person's labor is feeding old obligations before it can build anything new. The other person's labor gets to accumulate. From the outside, they look similar. Same commute, same groceries, same apartment, same paycheck, hitting on Friday. That is what happened here. Jake was not transformed by genius. He did not suddenly become ambitious in a new way. He simply reached the point where his monthly surplus was no longer being intercepted. After the emergency fund top up and a small lifestyle adjustment, he still had $1,100 a month going into investments. Not the full $1,340, because real life is not a clean spreadsheet. But even at $1,100 a month, invested consistently at 8% annually, that turns into about $201,000 in 20 years from contributions alone, and roughly $651,000 with growth. And this is where the effort story falls apart. Anna is not behind because she is lazy. She is behind because she is producing value she does not get to keep. Every month before she can choose growth, flexibility, rest, training, or risk, somebody else gets paid first. The card issuer, the loan servicer. What most people miss is that debt does not only take money. It takes optionality. It takes timing. It takes the ability to say yes to a move that makes sense over 5 years but looks unstable for 5 months. A better role with lower base salary and higher upside. A year of part-time work to build something of your own. And the answer is usually not the most talented person. It is the person whose monthly cash flow is less encumbered. Anna keeps running the same invisible calculation. If this goes wrong, can I still cover the payments? She may never say that sentence out loud, but it sits behind every decision. Behind the hesitation, behind the safer choice. Jake stopped asking that question in the same way, not because he became reckless, but because the math underneath his life changed. No mandatory consumer debt payments, a growing investment account, a lower survival floor. And once the floor drops, the ceiling rises. A bad quarter is no longer an emergency. A job transition is no longer a chain reaction. 18 months after his final debt payment, he made a lateral move at the same salary to a different company with better equity upside. This is why just work harder is such a useless piece of advice in personal finance. Hard work matters, but ownership matters. First, if your best years are spent servicing liabilities, your discipline is being harvested by a system that rewards asset holders before wage earners. The person with no consumer debt and steady investing is not merely saving more. They are gradually moving from being a payer in the system to being a participant in upside. And the burden is not only financial or psychological in a vague self-help sense. It is physical. A 2019 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences tracked people before and after debts were eliminated, not reduced, eliminated. Clinical anxiety symptoms fell from 78% of participants to 53%. That is not a mood improvement. That is a measurable reduction in diagnosable anxiety from closing debt accounts. More important for this conversation, their decision-making improved. That finding matters because debt is not experienced by the brain as a spreadsheet entry. It is experienced as an unresolved threat. Something open, something waiting, something that can punish you if ignored. And when the brain is continuously managing open threat in the background, it burns resources that should be available for planning, judgment, risk evaluation, and strategic thinking. The body keeps score too. Northwestern researchers found that high debt-to-asset ratios correlate with higher blood pressure and worse self-reported health outcomes, even after controlling for income. So when we say some people are being systematically harvested, we are not speaking metaphorically. The extraction happens in dollars, in attention, in career restraint, in sleep, in blood pressure, in the set of futures you can no longer seriously consider. That is the real split. What most people miss is that this doesn't turn around because you suddenly become more disciplined. It turns around when you remove choice from the first few moves. So make it mechanical. Make it boring. Start with one decision, not 10. Pick the payoff method before your next paycheck arrives. If your debt is spread across balances with mixed rates, the Avalanche method is mathematically stronger, almost every time. On a combined $50,000 debt load, it commonly saves somewhere between $3,000 and $6,000 in interest compared with Snowball. If the highest rate balance is a credit card, this is not really a personality question. High APR debt punishes hesitation. But arithmetic is not the only thing operating here. If you already tried that and stalled out, stop pretending the perfect method is helping you. Snowball works for some people because closed accounts feel real. A balance disappearing changes behavior faster than a spreadsheet does. That matters. The wrong plan finished is still better than the right plan abandoned after 6 weeks. Then do the least glamorous part. Find one fixed extra payment and automate it. Not, I'll try to throw more at it. Not, whatever's left at the end of the month. There is never anything left at the end of the month. Pick a number, give it a date. Attach it to the debt. On Anna's $23,400 of credit card debt at 22% APR. Minimum payments keep her trapped for about 9 years and cost roughly $21,000 in interest. An extra $200 a month cuts that to around 3 years and saves about $15,000. That is why the action has to be painfully specific. Open the app, rename one transfer debt first. Set it for the day after payroll hits. If the number is $200, make it $200. If you truly cannot do $200 yet, make it $75. But make it automatic. The amount matters less than breaking the old pattern where every extra dollar gets absorbed by food delivery, convenience, and tiny upgrades that feel harmless because none of them arrive as a single large bill. And the second trap comes right at the finish line. The final payment clears, you feel lighter, and then the freed up cash quietly leaks into lifestyle. Better takeout, slightly nicer weekends, another subscription, a trip justified as I deserve this now. This is where people think they're moving forward, while unknowingly rebuilding the same cage with softer furniture. The first destination is not exciting. That's exactly why it works. Rebuild cash reserves first, up to 6 months of expenses and liquid savings before you send money anywhere ambitious. Not because that sounds prudent, but because emergencies are what push people back onto credit cards. If your buffer is missing, the old system is still waiting underneath the new one. After that, capture the full 401k employer match. That is guaranteed return territory, the rare place where the math is almost insultingly in your favor. Then fund the Roth ERA, up to the 2025 limit of $7,000. Notice how unsexy that is. No stock picking, no reinvention, no dramatic financial identity, just redirected cash following a pre-written route. But that is the whole point. Wealth usually doesn't begin with inspiration. It begins when your old payment stops being a bill and starts being an instruction. So if you're waiting for a dramatic moment where your whole financial life suddenly looks rich, that's not how this ends. It ends quieter than that. 1 month the card gets paid in full. A few months later, the student loan portal stops mattering. Then one day you realize your paycheck lands and nothing is already standing there with its hand out. If this kind of breakdown helps you see money more clearly, subscribe. Because what most people miss is that the real win is not the number on a future chart. That's the promise here. Not luxury, not overnight freedom, not some fantasy where one perfect spreadsheet turns you into a millionaire. The promise is smaller, and because it's smaller, it's real. You sleep better because there's a buffer between you and bad news. You stop negotiating with every grocery bill, every car sound, every unknown charge. Everything changes when your money is no longer busy plugging old holes. The first small win is usually enough. One statement with no revolving balance. 1 month with less panic in your chest. One decision made without shame. That is how compounding begins to feel personal. Not as a miracle, but as breathing room you can keep. And if you ever need to step off the gas, you can